The most important thing about voice assist at CES has nothing to do with any individual device, and I think it's important, the key takeaway, the insight, it goes like this. There's a concept of compatibility and interoperability, and these things are different. Manufacturers have very different ideas when they manufacture things about what the ecosystem is going to look like. And the power of Alexa, last year there were roughly 1,100 Alexa skills, and this year somebody estimated there were roughly 30,000 on display. You had three things going on that were important. One, there probably were 30,000-ish Alexa skills on display. Google came with all their might and said, hey, Google is going to be a fang-tooth competitor to Alexa, and Apple had a HomeKit and ARKit all over the place. Bixby only lived in the Samsung booth, and there was no such thing as Cortana. But what actually happens is that, here's the value proposition for a consumer. You walk in the house, and instead of taking out your device and finding the Lights app for Philips Hue, and then finding the Crestron app and telling Crestron you want to read in the living room on a scenario that you set up, you go, Alexa, lights on, Alexa, tell Crestron I want to read in the living room, and you're done. So two things that never would have ever spoken to one another are made interoperable for you, and that was the story of voice command all over CES. And it's the only key insight you honestly need to take. It's cute to talk about the fat little magic mirror. And by the way, when you say to the Alexa, put my shower in disco mode, the Kohler shower, and starts squirting in disco mode, like, I gotta tell you, that's actually pretty awesome. That's just for me. Only outdone by telling the Toto toilet to flush and do what it does. And if you haven't seen a Toto toilet, I can't describe it to you from the stage, but you should go look.
I think when we talk about self-driving cars, that means that right now, at least, car makers have to tell two narratives at once. There's the story of how safe are these cars going to be, and how will they protect us if we're not the ones driving. But then at the same time, they have to tell the story of, well, if we're not driving, what will we be doing in the front seat, and how will we be entertaining ourselves? And I think the challenge, both for them and for us as reporters who are trying to make sense of this for our readers, is these two narratives being spun at the same time.
Yeah, and I think there's two others that go along with it too. I agree with that. If you think about it, with these screens now in self-driving cars, that's going to create another hour to 2 hours a day of video media consumption time as these things get rolled out.
So, you know, John, interestingly, a lot of the Samsung, one of the few things they did in their booth that was interesting is the wall, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, we got to get to that. Hold that.
But the other was their telematics, and they built their version of what a cockpit in a car would look like in a Samsung telematics environment. And the first thing that you would want to ask is, I'm already carrying a device in my pocket. It's got a quad-core computer and 5 radios. What do I need all this, all of this stuff going on? And the answer is actually the right answer. There are hundreds of sensors in the car. The car's got all kinds of stuff it needs to do, and it needs really high-power computational capability. It needs amazing sensor capability, and they're trying to put all that together. So the self-driving car story at the show this year, in tactical, practical terms, the headlight and the front bumper of your semi-autonomous vehicle, you crack a headlight, it's $2,600 for the part and about $3,000 to put it in because they have to align it. The beamer that they were showing at the show, if you crack a headlight and they have to replace it, that car needs to run on a straight road for 60 miles. 60 miles, dead straight without making a turn before it can be certified ready for you to take it. Think about what they have to do to your bill. They have to put a human being in that car for 60 miles before they can give it back to you and say, it's BMW certified for you to now drive it. The sensors are aligned for the collision avoidance at the level 1 that it is right now. So what we learned at CES this year from the car companies is that insurance premiums are likely to go up, even with collision avoidance, by 20. Any car under 8,400 pounds will be voluntarily front-end, rear-end collision avoidant, and by 22, voluntarily by all automakers, anything under 10, or I think it's up to 10,000 pounds, which is basically everything, will be collision avoidant in a car. But according to Travelers, who was there, they said, look at the premiums. What's going to happen? You have these super expensive parts, and before all cars, like when all cars won't bang into each other, whiplash is saved, lives are saved, injuries are saved, but while they're banging into each other, get ready for some auto collision bills you've never seen before. So there was a lot of under the hood, no pun intended, kind of pun intended, sort of pun intended, stuff we learned at CES where, you know, you're thinking this is going to be one thing, and as it turns out, yeah, it's awesome until you have to pay for it.
So we should talk TVs, which is funny, because usually when you think about CES in years past, TVs would be the first thing perhaps that you talked about. Does everybody know what the wall is? Have you heard? All right, we're going to do the wall. Who wants to do the wall? You want to do?
The wall is a 146-inch TV from Samsung, and it's not just one contiguous
like that,
panel. It's made of these sort of tiled modules. And Samsung's pitch there is that with this technology, someone in theory could build an even bigger TV or a TV of a custom size. And it definitely, from afar, we thought it was impressive. If you get close enough, especially with the TV off, you can see the outlines of the tiles. But that's almost not the point, just because this wasn't, as far as I understand, a product that was meant for sale anytime.
Yeah,
soon.
Samsung says
prototype.
they don't even know what the price would be.
It's just funny, because this is the second time tonight already that we're talking about some kind of arms race. This would be a TV arms race, and the first one we were talking about was among AI assistants. Yeah. And I think in a way this is the least or the less interesting of the two right now. I think at CES in general, and you guys feel free to disagree with me, I think the two sweet spots are the products that you can buy soon and the ones you can buy a decade from now. 8K is in a weird middle ground where I think we will one day be able to buy these items. I think we've also seen them at CESs in the past. And I think the arms race among TV makers to go bigger and sharper, at least for us journalists, I don't know if all the spectators would say that, it can get a little tiresome after a while.
Well, I think we're also at this point where how many actually have a 4K TV? Okay.
Some.
So how often do you buy a new TV? You probably know the answer to that. What's the...
Whenever they tell you to, because they now break and they never used to.
Right, and you can't repair them. So
No, they're irreparable. But
right.
by the way,
so it's like 7 years.
But
is that the upgrade cycle?
No, it's way shorter than that.
Really?
Now. It's closer to
4
4 years.
4 to 5. Okay.
And the thing is, this Christmas there was a 45-inch 4K set at Costco for $299. So like less than dinner for 4 at a good restaurant. You have a
right, but as the upgrade cycles are slower on that type of product, and 4K is just making it out.
Oh, 8K is far in the future.
Yeah.
There's no reason, unless you have a set bigger than 65 inches, there's no reason on this earth to have an 8K set. What you need is HDR. You need high dynamic range and you need wide color gamut to give you the perception of a great picture. But if your picture's below 65 inches, it's 4K is fine. It's just about the dots on the bottom, right? If you can't see the dots, you can't see the dots. If you can, you can. So you're right, it's a little tiresome because asked and answered, to be fair.
But I always find CES always stops me from buying a TV because...
Really?
Yeah. So like this new one's
this one's coming out.
Yeah, well, because the thing you see at the show is going to come out in April or May, right? So
yes.
you think, okay, when that comes out, I'm going to buy it. And then by April, May, they already start talking about next year's models. Like, oh, I'm going to wait to see that one. And so I have I have black and white TVs. Yeah. So on Thursday of last week, a week ago today, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg announced that they were changing how the news feed's constructed, right? And this, I assume most people here might have followed that, and it has a very large impact on content, or will have an impact on content consumption and how the news feed's constructed. So that was sort of hitting people in the live rumor mill on Tuesday, Wednesday, building to a fever pitch, and then in fact at the show, while he was at the show Thursday, Mark did make that announcement. So I was curious as to how other people in their circles were reacting to that. In my venture circles, everyone was suicidal, and then putting on a good face about it. But truthfully, it's almost an existential question for a lot of early stage content companies. But again, I was curious to other reactions around that because it happened contiguous with the show, contemporaneous with the show.
I'm not convinced it's good news for end users, but I think for Facebook itself, it allows them to kill two birds with one stone. It sort of reboots this idea of people sharing personal content about themselves, which I believe had been dipping and declining over the years. And I think it's a shortcut to maybe addressing the fake news problem. I don't think it's a long-term solution. I think a long-term solution would really involve human editors, but a shortcut solution is to say, well, we'll just show less news to begin with.
Well, yeah, and I think it goes to, I have to say I get very sick of my Facebook feed. I see a lot of crappy videos and crappy articles with crappy headlines, not from the Wall Street Journal, of course, or Engadget. But there's been this race to the bottom for news, right? Race to the bottom for news, race to get clicks through Facebook, and many business models have been built on it. I'm sorry to hear for your companies. But the tried and true news brands that have built audiences, I have to say, I wasn't all that sad about hearing this. I know the Wall Street Journal has a dedicated reader base. I hear from them all the time. I don't think they're just flipping through their news feed and just clicking away. They're reading, and I think if Facebook can master bringing those things together, then we will all be in a better place. But what was created from what Facebook created was not a good situation for journalism.
The other one I'd say off the floor, it was pretty interesting last week for me, was cryptocurrency stuff. I don't know, again, how much everybody in this world, this room is following the world of ICOs and things like that. But I can tell you that crowd was. Everyone I was meeting with literally would not look at you in the eye. Everyone was looking at their phones, even if I'm trading on Coinbase, literally as they're trying to talk to you. In the first day and a half, I was insulted.
Just reminded me. That's all good.
And then if you can't beat them, join them. So yeah, I was trading on some Coinbase, and it's just amazingly addictive in the following way, because the variations are so great in such small amounts of time that you can't get away from it. It's not like the market is going to do this today and then you'll pick it up. The stock market is going to do this today and you'll pick it up again tomorrow. The minute to minute and less than that fluctuations is completely addictive to that experience. And we have one company I visited that bought a house in Vegas to house the company's activities around its ICO. And that's an interesting thing to do. And they literally can take the money that they get from the cryptocurrency and go to the tables with it right there.
I just have to say, just if I might for 1 second, at my breakfast at CES on Wednesday, I announced tongue firmly in cheek Shelley coin and got rousing applause and think I could have done it. So if you guys are interested in Shelley coin, I will launch it tonight because we can go right now. It's good a time for an ICO as any. Honda had 3 robots on display, and it was kind of fascinating. One looked like if Big Six and R2-D2 had a baby. It was like a squishy little thing that looked like one of those Russian dolls that has a doll inside and a doll inside. It looked like that. And had big eyes, and it was really stupid looking. And then one was like a Zamboni, or like a small refrigerator that was but it had Zamboni mode because you could ride it like a Zamboni. And then the other was an ATV with a platform on it, clearly going to be weaponized, unquestionably. But the senior executive at Honda said something to me that I thought was fascinating. The whole thing about Honda was that they were trying to figure out how human-machine empathy could be somehow enhanced. Americans are afraid of robots. We think they're like Terminator. We expect robots to come and kill us.
And take our jobs.
And definitely take our jobs.
The robots that got the most attention, and I think that people reacted the most warmly to, were not anthropomorphic. They were very squarely modeled after animals, and I think things that were not threatening. And I think this supports your point, too, that they seem to be robots that, A, wouldn't kill us, wouldn't take our jobs. They were cuddly as a robot could be. There was Sony's Aibo robot dog. There was Aflac, the insurance company, surprised everyone with a robot duck meant for pediatric cancer patients. And I don't think it's a coincidence, to either of your points, that the robots that people were most receptive to were not at all anthropomorphic and didn't seem to mimic us in any way.